get like this tunnel vision, like I have to be a producer in the studio making beats for rappers. That's not true. Like you could make beats for podcasts. You can make beats for YouTube channels. You can make instrumental music for like commercials, sync licensing. There's a plethora of other things that you can use with the skills that you have.
Welcome to the DIY Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Nico Santana. This is brought to you by DistroKid. Get 7% off your yearly membership plan, distrokid.com/VIP/Nico Santana. All right, everybody, welcome back to the DIY Artist Podcast. My name is Nico Santana, and welcome back. Thanks for tuning in to the last 3 episodes. Today, I am joined by a friend, a guest of the show, and hopefully a reoccurring guest of the show. He is a producer, but I met him as a rapper, believe it or not. We linked up originally to do this podcast about 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, it did not do the podcast justice. It did not do him justice. So we are actually going at this for a second time, trying to get it right. My boy, Mr. Cruz, is in the building, y'all. Welcome, Mr. Cruz. Thank you for doing this again, brother. And I definitely want to recap and give you the ability to share your story once again, but none of this would be possible if it weren't for the good folks over at DistroKid. So DistroKid's who I'm repping here. This podcast is sponsored by DistroKid, and I just want to give a huge shout out to the artist community who do use DistroKid. Not only are you saving money, but you're tapping into resources that are included in your membership. You're able to do a lot of things DIY for yourself, whether it's promo cards, whether it's mini videos, you name it. You can use a lot of their resources for marketing materials and, of course, getting your music distributed to over 150 digital music platforms. So make sure to sign up if you haven't already. And if you are a part of the community, again, thank you for being a part of this great DistroKid community as well. By the way, everybody that's been on this podcast has used DistroKid. So there we go. But anyways, man, again, thank you for joining me, bro. I know last time we had a chance to chat. We went over your history, and I'm over here rambling, bro. How are you doing on this fine Tuesday evening?
Super good, because today was the last day of school before Thanksgiving break. So I'm looking forward to getting a lot of time in the studio and just being able to chill and take a break. So I'm chilling, man.
No, that's great. And for the audience, man, he is not currently attending school. He is a teacher.
Yeah, 7th grade math.
So,
that's what I teach.
There you go, man. We had a podcast recently. It was actually the episode prior to yours. Will Hatton, who's also a producer. He was actually a professor or instructor, rather, at that university. And so it was cool to see him transition and talk about his transition from being an actual teacher. Of course, he was not teaching math. He was teaching production. But needless to say, he was still in front of an audience. He was still in front of people teaching them a specific subject. Mm-hmm. And that translated really well for him to be able to essentially jump ship and go full time as an online educator, continuing to produce and continuing to put out his music and whatnot and so forth. So, yeah. Are you finding that, between your day job and what you're doing online, there's a little bit of a skill transfer, or are those two worlds completely different for you?
Man, honestly, man, I was just thinking about this today, how I'm really heading into a season of being prepared to quit my job and then focus on creating content and music production full time. And I'm just sitting there thinking man, I'm probably one day going to make a video talking about quitting my job. And I was just really, really grateful that teaching, especially having a career in education, really set me up to be successful on YouTube, specifically on YouTube. Several years ago, one of my friends was I had made some little tutorial. My friend over in Berlin, I think it was this, somewhere overseas, he was like, hey man, you should do more of those, because you're really good at explaining things and making it simple. And then kind of on his request, I started making more. And I would say being in the classroom and having to teach kids a very complex mathematical equation made it easy for me in the studio to all right, how does a compressor work? How does the EQing work? How do you make melodies? And making videos like that for, because most of my subscribers are pretty new or beginning producers, they're newcomers. So
those are some of the harder hitting videos on my channel as well, is the how-to, the tutorials. And not everybody has that skill. Not everybody has the ability to transfer complex information and make it palatable so that a wide range of users can consume that, right? And I think that that's what makes someone in your shoes and your position unique, that whether or not you continue to have the day job. It's just refining that skill and continuing to use it on a day-to-day basis, whether online or offline. I think that's going to, set you apart. And that's what I think we touched on last time that we spoke, which was, kind of creating that monopoly with your brand and your music. And at the end of the day, there are a plethora of artists and producers out there. So competition is huge. We know that the barrier to entry is very low nowadays. Anybody can just grab their laptop and kind of just, shoot from the hip and go at it, upload some, song on DistroKid and get to Spotify that way, which is great. I think that's an awesome thing to have, but at the same time, there are ways to make yourself stand out from the rest, and I think that's playing into your strengths and also playing into your current situation helps out a ton. Absolutely. For you. I could see that. So, by the way, you've been very active on TikTok, and I wanted to shout that out. Which I did last time, and that's really where I found a lot of value in your content, because it just made me happy, man. It's just like a feel good, content. You're really good at the short form stuff, man. Talk to me a little bit about how you got into TikTok and your thought pattern on that.
Yeah, I mean, that was all during COVID. My wife had got a TikTok, and so she was making them, and I was like, you look ridiculous over there in the corner with the massive ring light and doing these silly little skits. But she kind of encouraged me. She's like, oh, you should do it too. It's really fun. And for the most part, it was just my introduction to it was watching her make them, and then us just laying in bed, laughing at TikToks for hours. But yeah, then eventually I just kind of hopped on, and I realized that TikTok is a ridiculously easy platform for me to make content on. 'Cause most of it is just taking some trending sound or some trending video and making it relevant to how does that apply to music production. And I just found that I'm really good at taking something that somebody did about marriage or relationships and making it similar to or relatable to producers.
You're really good at that, man. I know that's a talent. I guess you could potentially develop that skill. I have yet to develop it, because for me it's not there. It's not hitting with
I'm
TikTok,
just
but
stuff, man.
I think that's what makes you unique, is you're making it your own at the end of the day, and it's catching the attention of people. And you have built a following. Are you still seeing that the numbers are growing on TikTok, or how has your trajectory been on the platform?
Man, it's so weird because at the beginning, I felt because I kind of had a very a video go viral early on. So maybe a month into me making TikToks, so one of my things went viral, and then my account kind of started getting some traction. So I kind of realized in doing that, and then in putting out content consistently, is that you never really know what content you have that's going to resonate with people.
Right.
So the best bet is just to put out as much as you can, make it as diverse. If y'all didn't know, Nico's name used to be Diverse. Just seeing what sticks. So there are moments where I'll put 2 or 3 TikToks out a day for 2 weeks straight, and then nothing. You get little to no love, and then one day something will kind of catch traction. Sometimes it's the next day, sometimes it's a month later. That something kind of picks up steams, and then it brings a lot more attention. But I'd say that's TikTok, also probably true with a lot of platforms,
And you were an early adopter of the platform, so that obviously puts you in an advantage, because not everybody could figure it out. And I know for me, the hesitancy was that it seemed like it was out of my age range or demographic. And actually, by the time that I started getting into TikTok, there was a point in time where I had quit social media. I decided to basically give up music, and I shut off my Facebook. I shut off my Instagram. And so I wasn't really on the socials like that. But then I decided, you know what, man, this is good. A good way for me to process the world around me is just to make music and put out music, and then hopefully be able to deliver some value to the artist community, which is kind of what I've been aiming at with this podcast and some of my previous videos when DistroKid started sponsoring. Needless to say, man, you were an early adopter, so you were able to kind of get in before everybody else started doing that, and so there was less competition, number one. Number two, you were able to find a format that worked for you. And I think that's the same principle can apply to music, is is being consistent, like you said, dropping as much as you can, and then once you find a format or a reference point by which you see that your audience is reacting to it, continuing to build up on that. But obviously, it's tough, man. It's easier said than done, you know?
In reality, you're going to put out a bunch of stuff that you worked really hard on that, like, nobody's going to give a crap about. Like, nobody's going to care. Like, nobody's going to like it. Nobody's going to share. Nobody's going to comment. And it really, it does mess with like, what you perceive as, like, your self-worth. Because you would think, like, oh, people love me or people like me because this post got a lot of engagement, and then you kind of think the opposite when, like, your stuff doesn't get a lot of engagement, and it is kind of like a ebb and flow battle, because I even sometimes have to, like, struggle with that too. Like, you know, man, I worked on this beat for 2 hours, and, you know, I spent an hour on the graphics and stuff, and then I put it out and, you know, 35 views. Like, man, I'm a suck. I'm terrible. I should just give up. But it really is just, like, you know, being consistent, because you never really know what's gonna pop off. And Kato, I don't know if you know Kato, the producer.
Yeah.
One of the things that he said that's, like, really, really impactful to me is that he's like, you know, going viral is one thing, but then, like, knowing what to do or how to respond to all that attention afterwards is another thing. And that's where I feel like I think I'm good on that end. Like, when I have a post or TikTok or an Instagram or something that goes viral, then it's like, okay, I know how to harness this and make sure that I retain the people and establish connections and build clientele base and stuff like that, instead of just like, oh, this is amazing, and then, like, resting on your laurels.
Yeah, so much of it is kind of luck of the draw with going viral and hitting that, you know, whether it's that video or that song at the perfect time for the market conditions, a lot of the things that are outside of our control. And we talked about this a little bit last time we spoke, but, you know, I've come to find that there's so many variables that play into whether or not a person can kind of be successful, right? And so, most of those are outside of our control, where we were born, how we were raised, like, you know, some of the skill sets we've been able to attain because of the schools that we went to or the schools that we didn't go to, the jobs that we had or didn't have, like, you know, so even the fact that you and I are having a conversation right now online, you know, 2021, we were born in this era, right? And so it just makes it for a lot of things that are outside of our control, that one of the key things that people fail to realize, especially when they've come to success, is something known as survivorship bias, where they feel like they've played a bigger role than they really have, not to diminish the accomplishments or anything like that, but that they've played a bigger role or had a bigger hand in the accomplishments without understanding all of the external variables that kind of align to give that person the opportunity to make it. And so, to your point with Kato, yeah, there's a lot of things outside of our control that could make a post go viral or a song take off. Like, I had a song that took off on TikTok, Limits the Sky, with 3 other guys that I worked on, and I talk about it in an upcoming podcast. But basically, most of us had made songs left and right, over 50, 100 songs distributed and marketed and all that good stuff. And this just so happened to fit the mood, fit the right, you know, market conditions. Like, this was an inspirational song during the time where, you know, it was needed because the pandemic happened. Everyone was, like, shut off from the world, and this song just kind of started being picked up on TikTok and used by regular users. And next thing we know, it's being Shazammed around the world, and we're hitting 100, 200. Now we're at like 300,000 streams on Spotify on that song alone, and we have over 200,000 videos that it's been used on TikTok, right? All that said, to your point, man, it's like, great, that's awesome. We've done that for one song. How are we retaining that audience? And how are you able to continue to build a brand off of it? And I think that's really where you could tell if a person has refined their skill sets enough and is self-aware enough to maintain that success, whether you're an artist or creative or whatever. But that's the biggest challenge. So I'm glad you said that, and it's fortunate for you that you know how to keep that, retain the audience. Could you speak into that a little bit more? Like, are you pointing people to, like, a funnel? Are you just DMing people? What's your strategy when you know somebody's kind of, or an audience has engaged with your content and you're trying to retain them?
All right, so like realistically, like I've tried so many things. So like I've built like the funnels and done that, done the whole like, hey, here's a free offering, and then try to sell them on something else, email marketing, like, and you name it, I've definitely done it. What I have found personally that like works the best is just literally like probably what most people are going to say is like just grassroots organically, like reaching out to people and networking and connecting with people. So I will personally respond to every single comment. When one of my posts ended up getting like 800,000 views and there ended up being like thousands and thousands of comments. So like, I didn't do it all in one day, but at once, like I'll go in there. Someone's like, oh man, this is hilarious, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, glad you think so, man. I appreciate that. So something as little as that kind of embeds your brand and your persona into that person's mind, because how many videos or posts or TikToks or something does that person leave a like and a comment under and then doesn't get a response? So they're going to remember when Mr. Cruz shouted me out. And then through that, like obviously if you're responding to a couple thousand comments, you're probably going to establish some sort of relationship or some sort of connection with maybe 100 people. And out of those 100, maybe 50 of them will like end up saying like, hey, where can I check out more of your stuff? And then that's when like you kind of seal the deal.
Yeah, no, that's true, man. I I've done the same thing, not with like going viral on TikTok, because that has yet to happen to me, but I have done that with opportunities that have come across online or email. And I shared the story with you before, and I've shared this on this podcast, but when DistroKid reached out to me initially, I thought, nah, bro, this is like spam. Like this is somebody like trying to hack my account or whatever. Just, it was very informal. It was very like, there's no graphics, nothing associated with it. But I still took the professional route, responded respectfully, and turned out, sure enough, it was a DistroKid employee, was actual legit. And so even offers that I still get nowadays, like I had an email come through the other day, maybe like a couple months ago, about potential sponsorship opportunity with Ford. I was like, it doesn't seem that legit. I still responded. I never got anything back. Who knows if it was legit or not? But all that said, man, just taking that 5 to 10 minutes max of just doing your due diligence, responding to comments, being respectful, like I think that goes a long way, man. And it goes to show like the power of branding with somebody like Gary Vaynerchuk, who has essentially created a platform in doing the same thing, engaging users, getting them on his content, talking to them face to face, whatever it is. I don't know the guy, I don't know his intentions, but sure seems to me that like whatever he's doing is really working for him, and it's more aligned with that grassroots movement. Don't get me wrong, I mean, he owns like a media and marketing company, so he still runs the paid ads, he still does like things here and there, but because he does a lot more stuff grassroots, people feel like he's more relatable and personable than somebody who's just, spamming you with ads or whatever. So, I've done like the 50-50 approach, where it's like, all right, I'll dedicate a small percentage of my budget to paid ads, and then also trying to maximize my output with content. And like you said, commenting on every comment, or if I get a question or whatever on Instagram, trying my best response. Yeah, dude, it's like, just do that. But, it's, my time is limited, and I have to understand that as well. And so I have to also spend the energy where it's going to maximize my return. Because if I'm treating this like a business, like I want it to be profitable, right? So you can't have your hand in everything. And that's where people start scaling up and hiring employees and things like that. So last time we touched on something like that before.
Oh, I was going to say, like, I think like one of the things that like you don't really learn, or at least that I don't see a lot of these like social media personalities teaching, maybe like Gary has like said it before, but it's like literally just being respectful and like being courteous. There was like one time where like I had shared a post about like some troll in my YouTube comments who like called me the N-word. And like I responded, I was like, bruh, I'm Puerto Rican. Like I literally wear a Puerto Rican like hat in every one of my videos. And then somebody had commented on that. I was like, oh, well, you're kind of being negative and like you're kind of disassociating yourself with that word, and it's like messed up because some of us. So like I just responded respectfully, like, well, like what do you think? Like, what's your perspective on it? And like literally that's all I said. And the dude like replied later, like, yeah, you're right. I took that comment down. I deleted it. Like, my bad, bro. Like, you do you. Like, keep up the good work. And it was just like, I could have taken that so many ways. Like, could have cursed the dude out or whatever. But it's kind of, it goes back to like, a kind word turns away wrath. Where it's like, you lose nothing by being kind to people and being like respectful in like your dealings. And
I watched a video recently where Gary had actually received a negative comment on his NFT projects, and sure, like it's not to everyone's liking, and I mean he's not an artist by any means, but the guy commented something negative about it, whatever, and he bought this guy's NFT. Like, so he actually went to this guy's store, bought his NFT, even though he hated on his. And the guy came back and had like an apology video, all that stuff, said, oh, Gary, you changed my life. You changed my family's life. I'm sorry, I was ignorant, yada, yada, so on and so forth. So it just reminded me of what you said with the way that you handled your comment. I think it is easier, especially now online, dude, like just to go back and forth. And, yeah, it just, don't give that type of energy and that vibe out. But switching topics here just for a moment, I was kind of just touching base on the scalability of an online business, and of course there's a lot less to have to do when you're doing something like this, an online business where you're not a brick and mortar shop or accounting firm or anything like that. You're literally handling every aspect of whether it's your email marketing, video production, so on and so forth. But with time constraints, you having a full-time job, you having a family, I'm in the same boat. Right. What have you tried that has seemed to be somewhat effective? What have you seen that is not as effective in terms of whether it's hiring people, contracting with people? Like what has worked for you and what hasn't?
Well, a big part of like what I do is like just like YouTube tutorials and like YouTube videos. And as a result of like putting so many eggs in that basket, like I've had to learn how to video edit. I've had to learn how to like set up a camera and record, and how do I record that like my desktop audio comes out different than my mic so that I can mix them differently, like do all those things. And even though I know how to do it now and I like do it pretty well, I've recently like started to hire out somebody to edit my videos. So for me, that's mainly strictly based on time, because in my opinion, like time is more valuable than money. Like I would rather save time than to end up saving money. So if it costs me paying somebody, hey, I'm going to give you $20, $30 to edit my videos, that's great, because for me on the back end, like I now have more time to make more videos, which like those videos can end up making me even more money. And, I could make more beats. I can sell more beats. I could spend more time networking. So it was definitely a risk in the beginning because, for one, like it was a reference. So like it was a guy that I knew who's like, hey, well, you should check out the dude who edits my videos. And after like, maybe 3 or 4 videos where it's like, hey man, can you change this? Oh, this part is not really on brand for me. Now it's just like a fluid machine. And I've even kind of hooked him up a little bit more just to kind of keep him happy so that, he can kind of continue doing good work for me, because it ends up being like a symbiotic relationship.
That's huge, man. I think that's one of the first things that if you can, hire out an editor, and for you musicians out there, obviously, if you're doing this yourself, mixing and mastering stuff, like hire that out. Like your video edits, your mixes, your mastering, like hire that out, especially if it can increase your quality or, like you said, increase your output. I think that I'm personally not there. I've considered that, but one of my buddies who's also a producer, full-time producer, Ivan Calderon, he's been doing this for I think a little over a year or two now. And he's in the same boat, man. He's trying to hire out, getting that video editing piece out to somebody else. We've had talks potentially having me doing that. I don't know if I have the time, to be honest, but we'll see. We'll see if it happens. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's crucial, man. I think another component that I think we tend to underlook is perhaps hiring out some of the marketing stuff that you've been doing as well. And obviously not telling you what to do with your business, but like some of the like email marketing, some of the things that are like a little bit more tedious and don't require a whole lot of skills to, at least the initial setup might be a little bit more, I don't know, time consuming, but then just the upkeep is not that bad. Have you looked into that as well, like hiring out for the marketing component, or is that something that you still feel like you need to hold on to?
Man, for me, like I've learned a ton, especially like on running ads, and you know I do like a twice a week email campaign, and you know email captures over free downloads, and it splits them up into, hey, this is an artist versus this is a producer, so I can kind of cater my emails to each individual group. I've been super, like, to me that's the stuff I really love to do, and the stuff that I really love to learn the most, like especially like the psychology of something like copywriting, like what words help land the sale better, or like what keywords or what subject line makes the person click, like open it and then click the link, or you know, all that stuff. I haven't looked into that yet. I've been more, that's a really good idea though. I've been more so focused on like the actual creative process of like, all right, who can I partner with to say like, hey, if I sell this beat, they're going to give me $100. I'm going to give you $40 to like do the mixing and the mastering. That's more of the stuff that I've been, but that's, you're kind of onto something. You planted something in my head here.
And just seeing the way that other companies operate, you know, I've had a media and marketing agency running for several years now, but really honing in on that for the past year and a half, 2 years, and just seeing how, you know, businesses operate, and they'll hire me for that type of stuff, and not pitching my services to you. But the reason why I bring that up is that for them, it's just easier to hand that work off to somebody else who won't charge them as much and who could potentially just do the work for them, and they'll focus on the things that they really want to focus on. Two things that came to mind, or really just one thing that came to mind when you were talking about kind of having that, you know, your footprint in that part of your business, is that this guy named Gary Tan, I think his name's Gary Tan, he said, you know, if you're in a job or in a position, or if you're doing something and it's not causing two things, that's when you know you need to either contract out or leave that job. And it's the learn and earn like position, right? So it's either you're doing it because you're learning, maybe you're not earning yet, but you're learning, or you're earning, you're not really learning anything, but you're earning. Obviously the best position to be in is where you're doing both, you're learning and you're earning. Yeah. And so you bring up a good point, man. Sometimes, you know, doing those things, even if they are tedious, because you're learning something about copywriting, writing sales funnels, the art or the skill of selling something, being convincing and doing it ethically, like all those things are super important to a business. And man, even just course building and all that stuff. I mean, it's a huge opportunity for a lot of artists, and even partnering up, like you were mentioning, with other artists, creating that clique in that community. I've thought about doing that myself, man. To be honest, I think it's better and more efficient if you are able to kind of create a team or a network of like-minded people that are after the same goals, and that could potentially build something bigger and better for the whole, you know, the sum, rather than just the parts individually. I think that would be ideal, but you know, I'm personally not there yet, but I love having these conversations because it sparks stuff in me as well, and I'm like, maybe there's an opportunity there. And for those of you listening, like, I think that's something that you could look into, is just look at your immediate network or circle and see what other opportunities, aside from just putting out music and making music, what other opportunities are there for you, so that you could fund your music, your creative ventures, having that solid stream of income, and then be able to use that to invest into your music, and vice versa. Create a personal brand, you know, create a production house, or whatever you want to call it, media company, you know.
Like on that note, like I found that it probably happened, like the mental switch happened for me earlier this summer, where I realized, like, man, you know, I'm putting out or making like 3 or 4 beats a week, and it's really taking a lot of time. And I was not collaborating with a lot of producers, or at least I wasn't seeking that out. If like somebody approached me like, hey man, do you want to collab on something? Great. Yeah, I'd love to. But then kind of realizing that that's a huge cheat code, where you're telling me I could spend 10 minutes making this piano loop, send it to somebody else, and they're going to make the rest of the beat. And like now if I do that same thing with, 10 other producers, let's say 5 of them respond. Well, now I've got the 5 beats that it would have taken me all week to make. And the great thing about that is that like when the beat sells, like it's so great to be able to send that text message like, hey man, so-and-so wants to buy this beat. Like, how much do you want? Like, how much do you need to walk away with for you to be happy? And like when that works, it's amazing because like now I've got a teammate. And I think people kind of get caught up with like, oh, well, I don't want to do that because then I lose out on that cut, or like, then I lose out on that money, or like, what if that person, ends up getting more of the recognition than I do? But like, I would want to be the person that, hey, everybody in my circle is winning, or like we're earning together versus I'm over here by myself on this island, because, you get further together than you will. I think was it Al Gore who like quoted something about like, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. That's just the way I've kind of viewed working and sourcing things out to other people lately.
I agree, man. And especially in this environment that we're in, and I mean, most of us are remote anyways when it comes to music production, so it's not like you go to an office and like start like cranking out beats with like your buddies, right? In your cubicles.
Cubicle.
So right. So I think it's important to just even psychologically to have that community, that network to build with, to, like I said earlier, having that like-minded, business-oriented, creative, pocket of people that you can count on to, feed off of and feed into, right? And I think that that's what we're building here with this podcast, what we've been building outside of this podcast. You and I, as mentioned in the beginning, I met you when you were really heavy into rapping, and I want to speak into that a little bit more, how you made the transition into producing. But needless to say, like I feel like, that's an important aspect. One thing that came to mind, though, while you were talking is we've talked about it in this podcast before, and that's this whole notion of perhaps being too trusting, or maybe better yet, not, and for lack of a better word, being ignorant in the extent or degree that you are running a business, and so having appropriate agreements, contracts in place, expectations communicated up front has burnt a lot of people out. At the end of the day, yes, people want to make money, people want to be profitable, people do want to have some sort of recognition. We just are kind of wired like that as human beings, and we're not always wired to look out for the interests of others. It's just right. That's a common denominator amongst every person. So some more than others, but if you have your appropriate agreements and contracts and expectations set in place from the beginning, I think it reduces the probability of people kind of getting away with things that could potentially hurt you and your business. But more importantly, I think it just sets the stage for, hey, this is what we're getting into. Are you cool with it? And having that agreement set in stone. Unfortunately, I've run into a situation where it's like something was communicated verbally to me, and then I went off of the verbal word, the word that was given to me. That's how I took that particular musical project into my brain or whatever, executed based on those premises. And then when I delivered my portion of the song, then it started to be like this whole negotiation process. Well, being told like, well, you don't know what this was about. You don't know enough about this, or oh, I can do whatever I want with your vocals or whatever. And it's like, whoa, like there's principles here. Like, so I think just getting
like,
that,
even
even
less
if
offensive to just cut me off of the song than to like edit my vocals around, or
or just or even it's just a principle, right? Even saying like, hey, I'm going to pay you X amount, and then it's like, oh, well, we're going to do less with your part, so I'm going to pay you less. Well, I've already done my part. Like, why? Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, and so those things can burn bridges. They can burn friendships. They can burn. So just a word of warning, not for you specifically, but just for the people listening out there. If you don't know anything about contracts, if you don't know anything about agreements, I would say that that's an opportunity for a lot of us creatives, because we are so creative oriented that we don't really look at the language, we don't look at the warranties, we don't look at the law, the contract, anything like that. That most artists end up falling, or producers falling into the trap of being too trusting, and or not reading through the language, or not coming up on the offense and providing their own sets of rules and standards and kind of parameters to work in. So
Yeah,
I mean,
that's kind of interesting because I know a lot of, I mean, every producer, there's so many ways to do it. Like people are selling beats on SoundCloud and like, oh, well, just cash at me and like, you know, I'll take the beat off of my SoundCloud and stuff like that. That's kind of one of the ways that I've always tried to CYA, you know, because even if I, you know, for the several times that somebody says like, hey, well, make me this custom beat. So like, all right, well, if we're agreeing on this custom beat, like I'm literally going to put it on my store, text you, buy it from the store. And even in the instances that were like, oh, well, it's asking for my PayPal and I don't know my PayPal. I was like, all right, well, just get back to me whenever you want. I'll like disable it for now, but it has to be through that because that also includes like when they download the beat, it also includes like the license agreement. To kind of like, it's just always, and I think a lot of rappers don't realize that, that's not always for our benefit. It's not us to have like this paper that like we can screw you over with, but it's also for your protection too. Cause I would be upset if as a producer or as an artist, like, well, I bought that beat from you and then you sold it to somebody else. Like I bought the exclusive. Like, why does this other person have it as well? But obviously like when you have it in agreement, like in writing, like there's no argument there, you know?
Yeah, and even like another topic that's not as talked about or not known about as much, which is now being more popular, becoming more popular, especially with like just the digital revolution, is licensing. And a buddy of mine who is actually going to be featured on the podcast as well, Terrell Burt, he's been pursuing music at that angle. He kind of grew up, and you know some of the people that I'll be mentioning, but he grew up around KB from Reach Records. He grew up around Loso, who's now a battle rapper. He grew up around a lot of these guys from the Tampa, Orlando area. And I know you used to live here as well, so you probably have kind of like connected with some of those circles or know about them at least. But anyways, long story short, so, you know, he saw that there was an opportunity there for him because he wasn't reaching the same levels that they were. And so he started learning more about like the business side of music and learning about licensing and learning about contracts and contract negotiation and all that good stuff. And that positioned him to be able to now have his music placed on, you know, shows and movies. Like, you know, it's crazy, right? And there are people that make a decent living off of that type of stuff. But if you don't know, like you mentioned, he's just an artist. He's not even a producer. So when he's buying beats exclusively, which he doesn't do, he actually does a collective partnership with the producers. But if he did want to do that, like you said, knowing the language of the agreement and knowing that, yes, I do own the rights to this beat and I can put this on a licensing library, like that's all super important. So I'm glad you touched on that, dude. So let's talk about your come up, because we talked about it last time and it was a little bit more, you know, at the beginning of the podcast, but now that we've kind of squared away with some of the really good pieces of information for artists and producers, I want to talk about your story because I think that's equally as important here. So, when did you start producing, and how did you start?
All right, I started making beats when I was about 13 or 14 years old. I was rapping back then, and my neighbor had like this birthday party, and at the birthday party, this other dude who like also rap was there, so like we like battle rapped. It looked very different back then. Like it's a lot cooler nowadays than it was back then. But my friend's uncle was there. He's like, hey man, like I have a studio. Why don't you come over? We'll record some stuff. And his studio setup was like trash. But because I was, 14, 15 at the time, my brother or my mom would end up having to give me a ride. One day I got to his house earlier than I should have, and he was there with a friend, like making the beats. So my friend's uncle would like hit record, and then he'd tell the guy like, okay, play something. And then the guy would play something on the piano, and then like, all right, then he'd start building out the drums and stuff like that. But I'm sitting here watching them do that, and I was like, man, I could do that. Like that looks easy. I could figure it out. So then the following year, I kid you not, I mowed lawns 5 days a week for 2 months straight, so that I could save up money so that I could buy my first keyboard. And then I bought it like used from some dude at Sam Ash.
Nice.
And then that was like, then the rest was history.
That's crazy, man. And you were how old at this point in time when you got your first piece of equipment?
16. I mean, before that I had like a little Casio keyboard and I would just like make melodies, but like you couldn't record it. I couldn't save it. But my actual keyboard, I was like 16 when I could actually like start making a beat. And they were
okay. So you were 6.
They were bossy.
Yo, you got to start. You got to start from somewhere, man, and that's the important part, bro. And I think that's oftentimes a hindrance for a lot of us in the creative communities. Like, until I get this piece of equipment, you know, I won't be able to start right. And obviously, you need something to start with. You can't just. I guess you could start with a pencil and a table like we did at school, right? But all that said, man, so you started at 16. Now, when did you start recording your own voice and putting yourself out there as an artist?
So I mean, I had been rapping. For the most part, I was making beats for like myself and my friends, and we were actually going to like a really nice studio and recording all from my friend's uncle, and like he was footing the bill every single time, and it was pretty awesome. To literally just be focused on the creative aspect and like not have to worry about the money and stuff like that. But around, I want to say high school. No, not high school. Around college is like when I was like, well, why don't I just record at my house? So then I started buying equipment and doing that stuff myself. And again, it was trash. Like I didn't know how to mix. I still feel like I don't know how to mix, but you can always get better.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of around the time when I realized like I have to do this because I was just like, I was booking more gigs, and then like I also wanted to be able to put out songs and albums more frequently. And so like the easiest way from point A to point B is just like, let me figure it out myself instead of like waiting on somebody else's studio time to be available and whatnot.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. So you started getting bookings, and at this point in time, are you thinking I'm doing the artist route for sure, or what was the switch from artist to now I'm just gonna sit back and do production full time?
Well, I was really excited about like the artistry route that I was taking. This was at like the dawn of like social media marketing, and you got to have a Facebook fan page and all this other stuff. So I was not really good at that stuff. And I think had I been more prepared to do that stuff, like I probably would have stuck around with it a lot more. But I ended up getting married and then, starting a family. And then when that happened, I put music on the back burner, like way on the back burner. And then a couple years later, I saw a friend of mine on Instagram, and like he was posting beats, and this was like a good friend of mine. I was like, dude, I didn't know you were making beats. And so like, yeah, I started earlier this year. And I'm on this website, BeatStars, and I'm selling beats on there. And I was like, dude, if you can do it, there's no doubt in my mind that I can figure it out. And then that was kind of like when I decided to pick it back up. However, the number one reason why that interaction with my friend all those years ago, like not all those years, it was like 5 years ago. The reason why that interaction really inspired me to like pick it back up again is because at the time I was, a father, like my kid was maybe 2 years old, and like I wanted to give my kid the example of being able to watch somebody their whole lives who like never gave up. So that was like I want him to grow up seeing me chase my dream like at 30, at 40, at 50, and just like never quitting.
There's a fine line between just what's the right word? Like, I guess just living in a fantasy and also having a dream and chasing that dream and that ambition, right? And so I think for a lot of people, like it does, that line is very blurred. And it can come to be where now they're just chasing fantasy. Whereas for you, at least the way outside looking in, and please correct me if I'm wrong, from the artist that I knew, formerly known as Javi, to now Mr. Cruz, producer and business owner, I see you succeeding in this field because, you're doing what you're good at, and then you're learning skills or exposing kind of weaknesses, or perhaps seeing opportunities where you could develop other skills that could help increase your business and your workflow and hiring out and all that stuff. and actually like creating a business around it, right? And so I think that's a solid dream to have. Whereas somebody like myself, at a certain point in time, I was chasing kind of like a fantasy from the artist perspective, where when you mentioned earlier, I used to go by Diverse, so I had like this whole career planned out when I first started recording music at the age of like 15, 14, whatever it was, up until I started making the switch to Nico Santana, my government name or abbreviation of that, and trying to, be the next J Balvin / Pitbull, right? And so I had to kind of humble myself and realize that there's a lot of things that I can't control. I was also starting a family. My son was relatively young, and so I had to pull back and say, this is actually no longer beneficial for my family. Whereas now what I'm doing, similar to you, is like creating that business around it, being a little bit more practical with it, just focusing on what's the next step, as opposed to like, light years ahead where I'm balling in a mansion, driving a Lambo, whatever. Just kidding. But, but financial stability, obviously that's a huge thing for me. And that's something that I didn't necessarily have growing up. And so obviously having those parameters to work with is huge for me as well. So,
and like, I think even artists and producers, like we kind of get so caught up and like, we get like this tunnel vision, like, no, I have to be a producer in the studio making beats for rappers.
Right.
Well, like that's not true. Like you could make beats for podcasts. You can make beats for YouTube channels. You can make like instrumental music for like commercials. You could do like sync licensing. There's a plethora of other things that you can use with the skills that you have. Like you don't have to be so narrow-minded to think like, if I don't make it as like a multi-platinum producer winning Grammys, then I didn't make it at all. Yeah, and that's like kind of one of the things that I've learned is like, I've been so focused on I got to make beats and sell beats to rappers, where like all along, especially like this year kind of opened my eyes to it. Like, you know what, like I think I'm pretty sure I've made more money from like YouTube this year from making YouTube videos than I have from selling beats. So like, why not? Maybe that's the route that I can take. Like, regardless, at the end of the day, I'm doing something that I love.
Right.
And then hopefully, building it up to the point where like it's providing a living,
Yeah. That pivoting factor is crucial for any business, period. But just having that adaptability, like you mentioned, seeing where there's a need for your specific skills. Because here's one thing, like anybody can sit down and make beats, and that's not to sound offensive to the producer community. Like it's literally so easy where you could literally put loops together that most people don't require let me rephrase that. It doesn't require a lot of skills nowadays with the drag and drop to make a beat. So that's kind of the humbling, reality that we as artists and producers have to realize. Even with auto-tune, anybody can sound like phenomenal, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect, though, is that media, just like software, is scalable, so you can scale it exponentially and make a killing out of it. So now you have to work on, number one, identifying a need in your surroundings. So look at your network, look at where you are geographically, where you've positioned yourself in the marketplace, all that good stuff, identifying a need, and like you mentioned, seeing where the opportunity is greatest or where you're more efficient. In your case, it's YouTube, focusing on that, and then maybe doing that tunnel vision at that point in time, right? Based on your particular skill set, your needs, your experience, all that stuff, your history of being an artist, producer, etc. Now, like diving deep into who you are and being self-aware of that. And then I think if you follow like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, eventually it's like, all right, cool, you got food, you got shelter, that's covering the basics. Having profitability, right, like the 20% principle of like having my business create at least 20% worth of profit, meaning that after everything's paid out, you're paid out, all that stuff, you're in the profitability. Like that to me, that's success, right?
You're in the black.
All that said, man, yeah, in the black, exactly. So I think that's where we can look to be a little bit more realistic with our goals. And I think there's plenty out there for all of us, man. There's plenty eating out there, so we don't have to be selfish about it.
Yeah.
But Okay, man. Well, cool. I think I'm gonna leave it here because we're at the 50-minute mark, and I'm trying to keep this a little bit, within the hour. I'm trying to actually get it to half an hour, but it's just so much good conversation around some of these topics that I've had with different people, including yourself. So I definitely want to have you back, man. Any last thoughts, comments, or anything else that I may have missed that you wanted to bring to the table here for the audience?
I would say, I mean, if I had it to do all over again, like if I had to start from scratch tomorrow, I know that there's like the common saying of like quality over quantity. I found for me like that did not work. I think what was more important was honing in my work, my routine and my workflow to the point where like I can put out content consistently, and I can guarantee that I can put stuff out consistently. And then just being able to do that over and over again, eventually the quality improved. So I would say for like any artist out there, like if you're worried about like, oh, my song's not perfect, I don't want to put it out, like put it out anyways. Cause your next song's going to be better. And then the next one's going to be even better. And nobody really pops off of their first song unless you're like Lil Nas X. And that's an anomaly,
Yeah. There's actually a study, and I'm butchering the actual study, but it was like a professor. He asked two groups, right, to basically the end goal was to make the most beautiful drawing that they could. Mm-hmm. And these are people that were not like necessarily skilled at that. They were just kind of like, or maybe they were artists, I don't know. But either way, they were both on the same playing field. One group, he phrased the question, he said, make 100 drawings, right? And that was it. The other one was make the most beautiful drawing you can. Ironically, the ones that made 100 drawings, like the final rendition, was better than the ones that were asked to make the more beautiful one, right? The better aesthetically pleasing, right? And so that goes to show, like what you were saying, is just building that muscle where even if you don't put out everything that you create, because I think that there should be some iterations that should be private, or at least confined to a smaller subset of people. Like just continuing to work on that stuff. And nowadays with TikTok, like you're crushing it on there with shorter form reels and videos and stuff like that. Like that lends itself for an opportunity where people are more forgiving of lower quality material, and you can create that stream and that workflow where you're continuously being creative, hopefully not burning yourself out, but at the same time, creating that muscle memory for you so that when it's time to execute, you can crush it.
My secret is, and like people who check my TikTok out, like my niece kind of noticed it the other day. Like she was like, "Do you record them all in one day?" I was like, "Yeah." How'd you know? Like, cause you're wearing the same shirt. Like they're like, I don't care if I'm wearing the same shirt. Like I'm gonna just do it, and I literally record them all like on a Saturday night, and I knock out 7, so that way I got one to post every single day, and then. So Smart. I just like you said, like I don't burn out, and I've got the consistency going, and so it just.
Mr. Cruz, it was a pleasure speaking with you, brother. I know you got a website, and that kind of funnels everyone to everything that they need to know about you. Is that correct?
Yes, bingo. Yeah. So it's literally my name. So my name is MRCRU2, and it's literally just www.mrcru2.com. The 2 is a Z. And
I'll link it here below as well. So just look in the description below, and of course I'll show it here on the video. Make sure to, the biggest thing that you can do for us at this point in time, if you haven't already done so, if you found this content valuable, to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Go check out all of Mr. Cruz's content on TikTok, definitely his music. Go to his BeatStarts profile. Go to his MySpace, y'all. It's still active. I'm just kidding. I don't know. But yeah, just go check him out on all platforms. The biggest thing that you could do for us is just pump up the like ratio, please. We need to get more DIY artists like him to be known, and not just for the sake of being known, but also just because he's putting out quality stuff. There's great information out there for a lot of you DIY artists, so make sure to support him in that way and this channel in this way. Again, I want to thank my sponsors, DistroKid, for allowing this segment to happen, and of course the continued partnership throughout the last year and a half or so. If you haven't signed up already, make sure to use my VIP link in the description below. Follow me on Instagram, all that good stuff. And if you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you guys on the comment section below, messages, whatever it is. We just want to interact. Any questions that you have for Mr. Cruz or for myself, feel free to comment here. And that's all, folks. So thank you for staying tuned to this hour-long podcast episode. Mr. Cruz, thank you again for being on this. My pleasure. recording this on a second time here amidst the technical difficulties of the first one. So appreciate you, brother.
No, the feeling is mutual, man.